C81. I don't like the fact that my son is too much like him. Tang Xiaorui raised his gaze, his bright eyes looked at his father's sad face, and it was the first time he obediently leaned into his father's embrace. Following that, he said indifferently, "Daddy, your imagination is truly abundant, and you're still playing teleportation. You think too much. Hurry up and sleep." Jix Xiaohan was startled, then suddenly felt that he really was a little ridiculous, to actually say such childish words like that. What kind of aesthetic feeling did this man have? Why did he change her son's appearance to an unpleasing sharpness like his? No way, no way. She firmly refused to agree. She had to comb down her son's little Luhai, so that it would conform with his 3 years and 10 months of innocence and cuteness. "Mummy, I want to sleep a bit more. Please, let me go upstairs to sleep a bit more." "I promise, I'll just sleep a bit more." Tang Xiaonai was just a little lazy bones, begging Tang Yu with a little bit of a pampered tone. "Xiaonai, this won't do. Look at how your brother has woken up. You must go to school with him. Be obedient." Tang Yu had no choice but to earnestly reject his daughter's plea. This kind of lazy attitude had to be corrected. Jix Xiaohan swept his gaze across them with a serene gaze. Seeing his daughter's lazy look, his mood instantly improved. His tall and big body had already quickly left the table, and he walked to his daughter and squatted down. "Xiaonai, what's wrong? You don't look like you're awake. Did you not sleep well last night because you didn't sleep with your dad?" Tang Yu. Did this man even have face left? His daughter was born to love sleeping. What did it have to do with him? He had truly taken himself seriously. "Daddy, I want to sleep a little longer." "Mummy won't let me." The moment the little fellow saw its loving father, its eyes immediately reddened with grievance. "Come, let me hug you for a while. I'll carry you to eat breakfast, okay?" Of course, Jix Xiaohan wouldn't let her go back to sleep on the bed. However, he could hold the little guy in his arms and let her be lazy for a while. "Daddy is so nice. Xiaonai loves you so much." The little guy was so happy that she was about to fly up to her father. However, halfway through her pounce, she was suddenly pulled back by Tang Yu. "Can you stop relying on your daughter for everything? So what if I hug my daughter? Your daughter is still so young. You can't ask her to follow all the rules like an adult." Jix Xiaohan felt that Tang Yu was punishing his daughter too severely. But Tang Yu felt that if he doted on his daughter like that, sooner or later, he would spoil her. Both of them had their own opinions, not allowing each other to take even a single step. Tang Xiaorui swung her short legs, slowly walked over, and advised them, "Daddy, Mummy, if you still don't eat breakfast, breakfast will become cold." After that, Tang Xiaorui grabbed Tang Xiaonai's little hand. "Come over, let Big Brother accompany you to eat. You are not allowed to anger Mummy. Do you understand?" In fact, Tang Xiaonai listened to her brother ever since she was young. Although her brother always bullied her, most of the time, she was still happy to be coaxed by him. "Big Brother treats me the best. He. Tang Xiaonai immediately smiled like a little fool and followed her brother to the dining table. As Jix Xiaohan heard his daughter's words, he suddenly felt that there was an arrow piercing his heart. This little thing, it said that father was the best just now, but now it had turned around and become his big brother. Sigh, since little lovers are so fickle, what should he do in the future? Tang Yu was in a hurry to get to the company, so she could not be bothered to argue with this man anymore. She sat at the dining table, and started to eat her breakfast. As she ate, she took a peek at her son's new hairstyle. The more she looked, the more she thought of Jix Xiaohan. Thus, she stretched out her hand and patted her son's well-groomed little head. In an instant, her son's little young master hairstyle had been completely ruined. "Look, my son is so handsome. It's better to comb through his bangs. He's the most handsome." Tang Yu looked at his son's strange expression and immediately pinched his little face with a smile. "Mummy, why are you messing with my hair? It took me so much effort to learn to brush my hair back up." Tang Xiaorui looked extremely unhappy. Jix Xiaohan also felt that the woman's actions were weird. When he heard his son's protest, his gaze froze. Tang Yu curled his lips, Who told you to follow your father's example? Go and comb your hair to show your age. You're already so old. Don't mention that you're my son when you go out. Mummy, you didn't ask us to mention it in the first place. Tang Xiaorui felt even more wronged. The expression on the face of the person sitting on the table opposite to him turned extremely ugly all of a sudden. His son had imitated him by combing an identical hairstyle, yet this woman had scolded him for his age. Had she also scolded him in a roundabout way? Is he old? This was the first time Jix Xiaohan had doubted that he was a little too old. But was a man who was 27 years old considered old? Didn't you say that even at 40, there is only one flower? This woman has a serious problem with her aesthetic perception. Her son's words made Tang Yuyu sob, but very quickly, she said with a serious face, Mummy is still not used to you changing your hairstyle. Children should look like children. Jix Xiaohan immediately interrupted, Tang Yuyu, you sure have a lot to worry about. What kind of hairstyle does my son like? You have to care too. Tang Yuyu was startled. This man's IQ is still online? That's right. She was beating around the bush and despised his hairstyle. Since you think so, that's what I mean. Tang Yuyu couldn't even be bothered to reply. Jix Xiaohan was completely enraged. No one had ever dared to judge his appearance, and this was not the first time this woman had done so. C82. Tang Yuyu said innocently, seems like someone is overly confident in himself. I believe that I am not the only one who does not like your hairstyle, but the only one who dares to speak in front of you. I am probably the only one. You have to thank me. At least everything I say is true. Jix Xiaohan's heart was about to explode. Didn't this woman know that telling the truth was the most hurtful? Tang Xiaorui also planned to secretly extend his hand to tidy up his hair, but when he saw Mummy looking at him with such a stern gaze, he quickly retracted his hand. Yeah, Daddy is awesome. Xiaonei loves you so much. The little guy was overjoyed. She immediately jumped down from the chair and threw herself into Jix Xiaohan's embrace. Then, with her greasy little mouth, without caring about anything, kissed Jix Xiaohan ruthlessly on her handsome face. Jix Xiaohan. Tang Yuyu looked at his daughter's smug expression and sighed in his heart. This man really doted on her daughter. She would buy whatever her daughter wanted. When Tang Xiaorui heard that his sister actually had a horse, a strange look of sadness appeared on his face. Alas, if he had known earlier, he would have asked his father to buy one for him. He also had a wild horse in his heart, and he wanted it too. Other than feeling his daughter's happiness, Jix Xiaohan naturally saw his son's tiny sense of loss in his eyes. Thus, he intentionally asked his son, Xiaorui, do you like horses? I like it. Tang Xiaorui replied weakly, her small expression still at a loss. Daddy will give you one as well, okay? Jix Xiaohan immediately asked with a gentle smile. Really? Me too? This time, Tang Xiaorui was happy. His pair of black eyes released a bright light. Jix Xiaohan nodded his head. Of course, you are all my children. What Xiaonei has, you will have as well. Tang Xiaonei immediately pouted. Then does father love me more or loves brother more? All of you. Jix Xiaohan immediately replied. Tang Xiaonei curled her small mouth. Although she was a little resentful, she was still overjoyed when she thought that she had a pony. Tang Yuyu finished her breakfast silently, wiped her mouth with a tissue, and stood up. The two of you will go to school with father after watching the pony. Remember, listen to your teacher, do not cause trouble, it's up to you. Tang Xiaorui. Do not bully the female students, understand? Tang Xiaorui immediately shrugged his shoulders innocently. Mummy, don't worry. I've already explained it to you many times. I didn't bully them, and they took the initiative to come over to play with me, then started a fight for me. Jix Xiaohan listened to his son's serious expression and then listened to the contents of his words. His lips slightly raised. His son was already extremely enthralled at such a young age. It was true that he was very much like his son. Tang Yuyu touched his forehead. His son was messing with peach blossoms all over the place. Yet he looked so confident, just like a certain someone. All right, in the future, Do your best to prevent this from happening. I don't want to be invited to a family meeting. The reason why Tang Yuyu kept warning his son like this was because this wasn't the first time something like this had happened, but rather several times. Tang Xiaoru immediately guaranteed, "Mummy, don't worry. I will do my best to make you less worried, but my face is natural. Since they like me so much, I can't do anything about it." He spread out his hands with an innocent look on his face. Jik Xiaohan looked at Tang Yuyu, who was so angry that he couldn't even speak, feeling inexplicably good about it. This woman had always been angry with him, and now she was finally angered by her son. Serves her right. "Mummy, I can testify for brother. They really fought side by side for the sake of watching brother draw." Tang Xiaonai was afraid that her brother would be wronged, hence she immediately jumped out to speak up for him. Tang Yuyu looked at the two little fellows helping each other, and really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "All right, try your best to be obedient. Mummy needs to work now. I don't have that much time to deal with your troublesome matters. Daddy has time. If big brother gets into trouble in the future, let Daddy do it. It'll definitely be fine." Tang Xiaonai snickered and leaned in Jik Xiaohan's arms, looking like she was a little person. Jik Xiaohan immediately patted her head lovingly. "What Xiaonai says is right. Daddy is not afraid of trouble. Daddy will take your matters seriously." Was truly convinced by this man. He truly did not know how to speak nor feel pain at the waist. Teaching children was not something that could be done in a day or two. It was more of an accumulated matter that needed to be done over a long period of time. He spoke easily now. If his son and daughter were to cause trouble for him in the future, let's see if he still had to be so proud of himself. Tang Yuyu really did not have time to chat with the children. She stood up and was about to leave, but halfway through, she turned back and stared at Jik Xiaohan, and asked, "Can you change the car for me?" "What? You think the car I gave you isn't luxurious enough?" Jik Xiaohan leaned back in his chair lazily and raised his eyebrows. Tang Yuyu shook his head, and said with a serious face, "It's because it's too luxurious that I do not dare to drive out, afraid that people will gossip about me." When Jik Xiaohan heard her reasoning, he sneered, "Who doesn't wish to drive a good car out? Do you not feel that this reason is laughable? I'm a rookie, driving a car worth millions to and from work? That would be a joke. What kind of car would you like to drive? Do you want some tens of thousands?" Jik Xiaohan immediately asked sarcastically. Tang Yuyu. This man must have purposely embarrassed her. C83. When Tang Xiaoru heard his father asking for tens of thousands of cars from the mummy, he immediately frowned. "Daddy, the safety of the mummy is very important. Can't you give her a better car?" Tang Xiaonai also chimed in from the side. "That's right, Daddy. Please do me a favor. Don't let Mummy drive such a cheap car. If something happens, 5555, Xiaonai will never see Mummy again. It's so pitiful." But now, the two brats had pleaded for her, so Jik Xiaohan did not dare to be impudent, and could only say with a cold face, "I'll get Uncle Yuan to bring a 500,000 car back for you tomorrow." Jik Xiaohan softly snorted. "I wanted to take care of her, but unfortunately, your mummy doesn't appreciate it." Tang Yuyu suddenly did not like this topic anymore. Who wanted him to care about it? He had to stop her and her children from leaving the country. Could it be that she now wanted to ask him to borrow a car to repay him? The reason why Tang Yuyu was so confident in staying here was because she felt that this man was simply trapping her with two children. She felt a little dissatisfied in her heart. Tang Yuyu still drove Jik Xiaohan's luxury car outside, but this time she decided to park far away from the company. Jik Xiaohan led the two little fellows and saw two extremely beautiful pocket-sized ponies on a green grassland. The two pony were definitely carefully chosen before they could be bought. The color of their fur was extremely glossy, one white and one black. They were currently eating the grass with their heads lowered. The two little fellows seemed to have let go of themselves as they pounced and ran towards the two ponies. "Sigh, the two of you." "Slow down." Jik Xiaohan, who was behind them, suddenly chased crazily without caring about his image. Last time on the beach, S daughter had been hit on the face by the sand and her skin had even been scratched. This time, He was really afraid that his daughter would fall and hurt herself again, so the woman blamed him again. He didn't want her to find any reason to blame him again. "Daddy, run faster!" Tang Xiaonai shouted excitedly as she ran. Jik Xiaohan, dressed in a suit and shoes, ran to his daughter's side. His hair was messed up, but he felt happy. Looking at the figures of the two little fellows running, his heart felt like it was suddenly as warm as spring. Everything was just right. It made him want to freeze the image. Jik Xiaohan's wish came true. Uncle Yuan, who followed closely behind, had long since held onto a professional camera and was capturing this warm scene. "Daddy, did you name the pony?" "They're so small, so cute." The father and son duo stood beside the pony with happy smiles on their faces. Tang Xiaonai extended her hand out to touch the pony, but the pony suddenly raised its head and looked at her, scaring her so much that she retracted her hand, and looked at Jik Xiaohan while laughing foolishly. Jik Xiaohan half squatted down, and grabbed onto Tang Xiaonai's little hand. "Don't be afraid, they don't hurt people, they're very obedient." With his father's help, Tang Xiaonai was finally able to touch the pony's head. "They don't have a name yet. You and your brother can help them get one," Jik Xiaohan said gently. He grabbed a handful of grass and pushed it to the little black horse's mouth. The little black horse used its tongue and ate the grass in its mouth. Tang Xiaorui happily continued to pluck the grass, his happy smile written on his face. Tang Xiaonai tilted her head as she tried to figure out what was going on. After a long while, she finally spoke in a serious tone. "Daddy, it's nice to call it Little White. Brother's is Little Black." Upon hearing how simple it was to name her, Tang Xiaorui was immediately dissatisfied. "Idiot Xiaonai, I have no objections to call you Xiaobei, but this one is definitely not called Xiaohai. This does not suit its temperament. I don't care what you call him. I'll just call him Lil Black." "Lil Black is so nice to listen to. It suits its color so well," Tang Xiaonai immediately insisted. Tang Xiaorui rubbed his forehead. He understood his sister's personality, so he could only accept his fate. "All right, I'll be called Little Black." Tang Xiaonai laughed with satisfaction, as if she was a little fool. "Daddy, look, it's eating the grass in my hand." "Oh, Daddy, he almost bit my hand." "Daddy, when can I ride it?" "I wish I could ride it and play with it a little faster." "Daddy." Little White ran away. "Help me chase him." "Daddy, hurry." The innocent and cute shout continued to fly without end in the wind. Jik Xiaohan's heart was about to be softened by the two little fellows' shouts. After half an hour of playing, the two little fellows were still unwilling to leave. Jik Xiaohan had to patiently persuade them. "Xiaonai, you geese should go to school. Daddy doesn't want you to be late on the second day. This will leave a bad impression for teacher." "Daddy, can you help me ask for a day off? I still want to have a closer relationship with Lil White." Tang Xiaonai's soft voice was filled with pleading. "Xiaonai, no matter how much you play, you geese still have to put learning first, okay?" Jik Xiaohan suddenly realized that when children were unreasonable, they were more terrifying than anything. Tang Xiaonai's big eyes were already filled with tears. Although Tang Xiaorui also wanted to play along with the little black horse, he was still the older brother after all, so he had to set a good example. Daddy's words make a lot of sense. "Xiaonai, can you cry at any time?" "If Mummy knows that we aren't going to school, she would definitely be angry." After he moved out of Mummy, the tears in Tang Xiaonai's eyes instantly disappeared. She still remembered how Mummy felt when she refused to go to school. "All right, Lil White, be good. I'll feed you some grass when I come back from school. I'll miss you." Tang Xiaonai turned and bid farewell to her little white horse. Seeing Tang Xiaonai's childish behavior, Tang Xiaorui snorted in disdain. C-84. Jik Xiaohan was finally relieved, and with one hand holding the reins, he quickly walked in the direction of the carriage. "What the hell?" The two little fellows acted as if they heard about Tang Yu and immediately became obedient. How did that woman educate the two children that could make a child fear and love her? The other party was a rather famous female celebrity. Tang Yu had already investigated her information last night and knew that she was playing big at the airport. Tang Yu stood up, and smiled at the other party. Suddenly, the leader of the group, the beautiful lady, pointed at her face. "It's you?" Tang Yuyu was shocked. Her beautiful eyes widened as her mind raced. Had she ever seen this woman before? "I'll remember you. You are the person who was at the Tang clan a few days ago and asked you to help me with my clothes." "What a coincidence. I didn't expect to meet you here." Seeing Tang Yuyu's stupefied face, the other party very straightforwardly reduced the situation between the two of them. When they met, "Oh, it's you. I'm so sorry, but that day, she left in a hurry, and it was late in the morning." The other party had put on heavy makeup, so she could not see her original appearance, and even if Tang Yuyu had seen her once, he wouldn't be able to recognize her. "Call your director Liu over. I don't want to talk or cooperate with this person." The other party simply did not want to hear Tang Yuyu's explanation, so she arrogantly scolded the assistant beside him. "I do not like any of her designs, just change her for me, and I am willing to cooperate with you." Tang Yuyu had only heard that this person really liked to play the big cards on the net, but he never would have thought that his horizons would open up today. Because she didn't help lift her skirt that day, it had now become an unforgivable offense, so she could only chuckle. "Since that's the case, I'll take my leave now." Without waiting for the assistant to call Liu Zai over, Tang Yuyu had already tactfully decided to leave. Xie Ziyan originally thought that Tang Yuyu would plead bitterly with her for a bit, but she didn't expect that she would be so straightforward. She didn't like her plan, so she organized her script and planned to leave. Xie Ziyan still harbored hatred towards her in her heart, so how could he let her leave so easily? "Halt!" Just as Tang Yuyu was about to reach the door, Xie Ziyan berated her. Then, she shrugged her shoulders and walked in front of her with an imposing manner. She was small and half a head shorter than Tang Yuyu. At that moment, if she wanted to talk to Tang Yuyu, she could only raise her head, which made her even angrier. How could she be willing to lose her figure to an ordinary office worker when she had a small reputation? Thus, she deliberately made a mischievous grin, and snatched the design manuscript from Tang Yuyu's hands. "I'll see before I make a decision." Tang Yuyu frowned. She had never seen a woman as rude as her. Since she was a star and a public figure, couldn't she have a better attitude? "A little bit bigger?" Xie Ziyan took her script and leaned on the sofa as if she was an old man, raised her legs and started to look at Tang Yuyu's blueprints with heavy movements. Initially, Xie Ziyan thought that for a dull woman like her, there was nothing special about her. In the entire office, only Tang Yuyu was still wearing such a standard, black-colored job suit. That was the only reason why Xie Ziyan could feel that her outfit was rustic. When the page after page of design drawings flashed before her eyes, the arrogance on Xie Ziyan's face was slightly reduced. The reason why she came to find a personal designer to customize a bunch of clothes was because the various occasions that she had attended were all where she had clashed with other people's clothes. If she had bumped into someone less famous than her, that would have been okay, but she was afraid that she would have hit a big hand, which would have turned her into a miserable mess in an instant. That was why Xie Ziyan had paid such a high price, and only came to find a special personal designer. However, she didn't expect to meet a woman that had once offended her. Just then, the door opened, and Liu Zai walked in with a smile. "Xie Xiaoji, is there anything that you aren't satisfied about? You can tell me." Liu Zai first looked at Tang Yuyu. Tang Yuyu shrugged her shoulders at his foster mother, looking at her with a helpless expression. Of course, Liu Zai knew that all of this was not Tang Yuyu's fault. His temper was so bad that it was known by the entire industry. Li Fangfang was a little overboard. Giving such a tricky customer to a newbie was something she was capable of doing. Liu Zai only found out after hearing from the assistant that Tang Yuyu was meeting a customer, and the person was Xie Ziyan. Liu Zai became angry and rushed over to save the situation. "Director Liu, we can be considered to be friends. You actually sent an unknown designer to me. What do you mean by that? Are you looking down on me?" Xie Ziyan threw Tang Yuyu's design manuscript to the side. Both of his hands were crossed in front of his chest, as though he had suffered from a grievance. Liu Zai quickly smiled to appease his. "Xie Xiaoji, don't be angry, I only just found out about this matter. How about this, I'll arrange for our top designer, Li Fangfang, to look after her properly." "All right, Hurry up and switch people over. I get angry when I see her. When Xie Ziyan heard that he needed to arrange for a more famous designer to come, her attitude became slightly better. But when she saw the fair and elegant Tang Yuyu standing at the side, she intentionally wanted to poke her with a few words to vent her anger. Liu Zai turned and gave Tang Yuyu a meaningful glance. Tang Yuyu hurriedly walked over, packed up his script, and left. Not long later, Li Fangfang was notified to come to the guest room. Li Fangfang brought her a few new works of art. When Liu Zai saw her, she immediately scolded her. "What's wrong with you? Xie Xiaoji is our big client. How can you let a new customer treat her like this? Hurry up and coax Xie Xiaoji. If she doesn't satisfy you, I'll make you pay." C85. Li Fangfang was still afraid that Liu Zai would be angry, so she hurriedly lowered her head and apologized. "Director Liu, I didn't arrange everything properly this time. Please calm down. I won't make this kind of low-level mistake next time." "Xie Xiaoji, this is the Li Fangfang that I told you about. He is the elder of our office. You can take a look at her work first. If you like it, we will sign a contract and have a happy cooperation with her," Liu Zai said while beaming. "No, Xie Xiaoji is as popular as the sun in the sky. We still have a lot of room for cooperation in the future. You guys can talk first. If you have anything, just come find me." Liu Zai comforted Xie Ziyan well before leaving the reception room. "What's so good about me? If your mother was here, you'd be happy." Thinking about Sunset's good friend, Liu Zai's eyes became a little sour. "Mom liked to design too. You are her best friends, classmates." Tang Yuyu sighed. "That's right. You have also entered the design industry and fulfilled your mother's unfulfilled wish. Your mother will definitely be proud of you, even if she watches from the sky." Liu Zai patted her shoulder and said with a smile, I will work hard. I won't let Mom down," Tang Yuyu said with determination. In the guest room, Xie Ziyan listened to Li Fangfang's explanation of the various designs with unease. When she saw the drawing of Li Fangfang, she had already rejected it. "That's enough, Miss Li. You should call that woman in. I'm quite interested in her design." Xie Ziyan looked at the time. It had already wasted her last 10 minutes. She immediately rejected Li Fangfang's idea and decided to use Tang Yuyu's plan. Li Fangfang was completely dumbfounded. She did not think that she would actually lose to Tang Yuyu, a newbie who had only been in the Enter Company for 2 days. "Xie Xiaoji, are you not satisfied with my design? If you ask me, I can change it." Li Fangfang continued to persuade her, unwilling to admit that she was inferior to a newbie. "You're dissatisfied everywhere. You're too old-fashioned. Isn't this design of yours a long time ago? Don't you think it's shameful for you to take it out now?" Xie Ziyan was frank and straightforward. She was not afraid of hurting anyone when she spoke with her blade. Li Fangfang was completely dumbstruck this time, and only managed to react after a long while. "Go quickly, I don't have much time." "If you don't, find your director Liu and I'll tell her." Xie Ziyan was instantly angered, because Li Fangfang's reaction was too slow, causing her to delay again for precious time. Li Fangfang could only push open the door and leave unwillingly. She returned to the office desk, looked at Tang Yuyu who was seated beside her, and said with a sour expression, "Tang Yuyu, take your design and go to the guest room. Xie Ziyan said he has taken a fancy to your design." "What? Mine?" Tang Yuyu was a little shocked. The woman just now had rejected her outright. Li Fangfang scoffed. "That's right. Don't you feel a sense of accomplishment? Hurry up and go, lest she lose her temper with you again." Tang Yuyu frowned. Honestly speaking, she did not want to see Xie Ziyan again. She simply could not get along with him. However, thinking back to when his mother said that he was a big client that she had brought along with great difficulty, Tang Yuyu could only take the design blueprints and go over. She didn't want to disappoint her mother, and she didn't want her mother's hard work to be in vain. Pushing open the door of the reception room, Tang Yuyu saw Xie Ziyan with a sullen face sitting there waiting for her to enter. "What's your name?" Tang Yuyu immediately handed over her business card that she had just finished printing. "Tang Yuyu, show me your draft design, and tell me about your design philosophy," Xie Ziyan ordered with a look like she was an old man. Tang Yuyu had no choice but to sit beside her and begin explaining to her. Xie Ziyan realized that Tang Yuyu's design had a combination of purity and sexiness. Furthermore, she had an extremely good grasp of colors. When paired together with the same ceremonial dress with different colors, it gave off a very beautiful yet mischievous feeling. "Are these your originals?" "I don't want to run into people when I'm outside, do I?" Xie Ziyan asked with a cold smile. Tang Yuyu immediately guaranteed, "Of course it's my original design, you don't have to worry about that." "All right, in the future, I will take 10 sets of clothes from you every month. As for the price, we can discuss about it as well. But you have to guarantee that my clothes are unique and won't allow anyone to knock against my shirt." Xie Ziyan raised her chin like a queen and asked Tang Yuyu, "Fine, I will definitely do as you ask. Also, I guarantee that it will be my first work." Tang Yuyu never thought that Xie Ziyan would actually choose her own design. This made her feel a little accomplished. Xie Ziyan paid the deposit and signed the contract. Tang Yuyu saw Liu Zai walking over, wondering, "I never thought that Xie Ziyan would actually choose your trick." "In the end, congratulations, you have finally gotten first place. You will definitely get better and better, and will go further and further away." Liu Zai generously walked over to congratulate Tang Yuyu in front of everyone. A few colleagues by the side also came over to congratulate Tang Yuyu. Only Li Fangfang's face was stinky. She could not bring herself to be happy. The office was originally a stormy ground, so any small incidents that occurred during the process would be immediately spread out. All of them were stepping on Li Fangfang, saying that she had reached the end of the design industry, that her talent had been completely taken away by someone who had only been in the office for less than 2 days. C86. The rumors were the most hurtful, and Li Fangfang was also a proud and arrogant person. Although on the surface she didn't say anything, in the bottom of her heart, she naturally hated Tang Yuyu to the bones, and actually caused her to make such a huge fool of herself, and lose all face. Besides being happy, Tang Yuyu also noticed the displeasure on Li Fangfang's face, and could only sigh helplessly. Jik Xiaohan directly headed to the company after sending the 2 little fellows to school. The man let out a light snort. This woman actually had such an amiable scene. However, in front of him, she was like someone who had eaten gunpowder. She always liked to go against him. Just thinking about it made him clench his teeth in anger. Unknowingly, Jik Xiaohan stared at the woman in the photo for a minute. Even under this kind of distant lens, the slightly blurry Tang Yuyu was still able to make one's heart palpitate. What the hell? Jik Xiaohan deeply felt that he could actually feel her beauty, and immediately threw the photo into the trash can. He had seen many women that were more beautiful than her. How could such beauty arouse his interest? Lu King knocked on the door, informing him of the schedule for the day and the morning meeting that was about to begin. Ever since Jik Xiaohan had a child, he had been able to hold his composure even more. After he went to the meeting for half an hour, he suddenly realized that the picture that he threw in the trash can had disappeared. The bag in the trash can was put into a new one. So someone came in and cleaned up his trash can? With his heart annoyed, Jik Xiaohan immediately pressed down on the computer on the table and asked coldly, "I still have something important in the trash can just now, please bring it back immediately." "Quarterly, what is that thing?" "A picture." The assistant immediately rushed over to help him find it. Not long later, he retrieved the photo. "Quarterly, is this it?" the assistant asked, trembling. Jik Xiaohan snatched the photo away and said coldly, "Next time, without my permission, do not let anyone touch anything in my office, even the trash can." The assistant quickly replied, "Yes." Jik Xiaohan looked at the lost photos, opened the bottom drawer and threw them in. The drawer contained some of his personal things, which had not been in it for a long time. The cell phone on the table suddenly rang. Jik Xiaohan looked at the caller ID, reached for his phone, and picked up the call. "Grandmother." His voice was low and gentle. "Xiaohan, are you free tonight? Grandmother is coming to your city with some friends to play, and you can come out for dinner tonight." A benevolent voice was heard. "Grandma, Did you come alone? Your grandfather didn't come over? Jik Xiao Han was slightly startled, and then he asked with concern. Your grandfather didn't come. I came alone. Do you have any business with your grandfather? Old lady asked in concern. It's nothing, it's just some work matters. If I want to ask him face to face, I'll come next time. Tonight you have to come. Grandma hasn't seen you in days. I'm an old woman who came all the way here. It's not too good for you not to accompany me for a meal. Old lady immediately had a wrong tone. Good. Grandmother, let's meet tonight. Jik Xiao Han did not dare to disappoint his grandmother, so he could only agree. All right, let's talk when we meet. Old lady Jia was very happy to see that he had agreed. After hanging up the phone with his grandmother, Jik Xiao Han's handsome face flashed with a helpless smile. If it was before, he would be very willing to meet with his grandmother. But now, every time Grandma came to find him, she only had one purpose in mind: to make a blind date for him. In the past 2 years, for all sorts of reasons and occasions, his grandmother had tricked him into meeting more than 10 women. Those women were still looking for an opportunity to meet with him and take the next step. Sigh. With such a grandmother who was worried about his life, Jik Xiao Han felt that it was unbearable. Ever since his father went into a car accident and his mother remarried, Jik Xiao Han's personality had become gloomy. His younger brother had always loved music since he was young. He entered the entertainment circle at the age of 16, stirring up the limelight in the entertainment circle, angering his grandparents, restricting his personal freedom several times. Realizing that he was still unable to kill his younger brother's music sales and the determination to enter the entertainment circle, he could only let him do as he pleased. Then, the great cause of the entire Jia family would be inherited onto Jik Xiao Han's shoulders prematurely. From the age of 21 to today, 6 whole years had passed. The company's performance had increased by nearly 10 times, and he had become a legend in the market. Many people were guessing how much wealth he had, but no one had been able to calculate the exact numbers. Jik Xiao Han's actions were low-key, peaceful and wealthy. Others were guessing whether his money had already reached the status of being the richest man on earth, but he never spoke to anyone about it. He only silently earned money from him, and lived his most comfortable life. In the afternoon, after work, Tang Yu called Jik Xiao Han. Tonight, she might have to work another 2 hours. You're a newbie, how are you going to work? When Jik Xiao Han received her call, he unexpectedly had to work overtime. He was immediately angry, and did not want to accompany the children anymore. Tang Yu was instantly unconvinced. New people need to work overtime. I am currently developing my career. Can you please respect my profession? I can't go home for dinner tonight. What about the children? Jik Xiao Han had already completely become a wet nurse. If he did not come home tonight, he would have to worry about whether the children would be unhappy or if they would not be able to eat. You're not going back? Where are you going? Tang Yu was startled, and asked. Jik Xiao Han sneered, and said arrogantly, I am your boss, and the money I earn in 1 day is something you can't earn even in 3 lifetimes. Don't you need me to go out and socialize with you? Who said that I, 3 lives 3, wouldn't be able to earn it? In this life, I can earn all of your money. Do you believe me? Tang Yu really didn't like hearing such arrogant words from him. It was as if he was really that high and mighty. C87. Trust me. Jik Xiao Han laughed out loud. Tang Yu imitated his tone and said, wait until my son inherits your career. Won't his money be my money? Why can't I earn it? It was easy to earn. Tang Yu, do you believe that I won't let you lose your job? When Jik Xiao Han heard that she wanted to earn money with peace of mind, he immediately wanted to do something bad. The contract he signed with Xia Ziyan was for half a month, so he had to hand over 10 pieces of the work to her satisfaction. However, Tang Yu only had 3 pieces in his hands, which made her satisfied. So, facing such a vigilant client, completing the mission within half a month was still a challenge. It was just that Jik Xiao Han said that he had social meetups at night, so Tang Yu could only bring his work home to do. The Jia family was very unfamiliar with this little fellow. She should first return and accompany them, as she was truly a dependent daughter, afraid that she would cry. When Tang Yu drove the car back to Jia family's beach villa, she saw a very strange scene when she walked into the living room. In the luxurious living room, there were now two cute little fellows. "Mummy, you're back. Come and take a look, Little White and Little Black. Aren't they very cute? I like them so much." When Tang Xiaonai saw that the mummy had returned, she instantly jumped over happily and pulled on one of her fingers, pulling her to look at her cute new pet. Tang Yuyu had yet to recover from the strange scene when he saw Uncle Yuan walking over from the side. When Uncle Yuan saw Tang Yuyu, his expression was also speechless. "Uncle Yuan, how did you agree to let them bring the pony into the living room?" Tang Yuyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The Uncle Yuan could only smile and say, "After school, little young master and young miss circled around the two ponies. When it was dark, they refused to go home, but unfortunately, there are too many mosquitoes on the grass, so I called young master to ask around." When young master heard that the two little fellows had been bitten by mosquitoes, he immediately agreed to let them bring the pony back to the living room to play. Tang Yuyu's brain had been kicked by a horse. How could he agree to such a thing? "Mummy." Tang Xiaonai tugged on her fingers with all her might. "Mummy, come quickly and greet Xiao Bei and Xiao Hai quickly. They are really fun to play. Be obedient just like me and Big Brother." "Miss Tang, why don't you accompany the children to play?" "Young master just called and said that he won't be home to eat dinner, and dinner will be ready soon," Uncle Yuan said with all his heart. "Thank you, Uncle Yuan," Tang Yuyu said politely. Tang Xiaorui sat on the sofa with his legs crossed like a little adult, holding onto a drawing board. He seemed to be drawing. The picture was of the two pony horses standing in the living room, staring blankly. Obviously, the two ponies were not used to this strange environment. From time to time, they would cry out a few cries, looking pitiful. "Mummy, quickly say hello to Little White. It likes me so much." Tang Xiaonai was extremely excited, her face red. She pointed to the pony and said. Tang Yuyu squatted down and rubbed the pony's head with her hands. Then, he said in all seriousness, "Xiaonai, Xiaorui, you guys are playing too hard. The pony aren't used to standing here. They like to live on the grass, so I request you to immediately send the pony back." "Why, Mummy? I haven't played enough with them." "Daddy said that I can bring them to the living room to play." Tang Xiaonai immediately became anxious when he heard that she was not allowed to play with the pony. "Your father must be crazy, for him to agree to your unreasonable request." Tang Yuyu definitely would not allow that man to spoil his child to such a reckless state. With a stern face, he said, "Mummy isn't joking with you guys. Now let Uncle Yuan send the pony out, if you want to play tomorrow after school. Do you hear me?" "Mummy is so fierce." Tang Xiaonai Shunjian's eyes turned red from grief. She looked pitifully at her own pony, then looked at Tang Xiaorui who was half done drawing, and was completely dumbfounded. "Big Brother still wants to paint her pony. It's not even done yet. Mummy, can you let them stay here for a while longer?" "No, listen carefully to what Mummy has to say. Don't mess around." Tang Yuyu did not want to cultivate this kind of habit of doing whatever they wanted, so her requirements were still as strict as before. Tang Xiaorui had a pitiful expression on his face as he placed the drawing board to the side, and said faintly, "All right, we will listen to Mummy. Don't be angry, Mummy." Tang Xiaonai wanted to continue to persevere, but hearing that her brother had surrendered, she had nothing to say, and could only sit to the side in silence, feeling wronged. Tang Yuyu immediately turned around to look for Uncle Yuan, who ordered two servants to lead the two pony out. Tang Yuyu walked over to see his son's drawing. It was extremely abstract, and normal people would not be able to appreciate it. "Xiaonai, are you angry?" Tang Yuyu squatted in front of his daughter and planned to make up with her. "I miss Dad." Tang Xiaonai's mouth was wide opened as tears rolled down her cheeks. "Even if your father is here, the mummy will still bring him out." Tang Yuyu was shocked. Her daughter had already switched to Jixiao Han's camp. Scolding her was not an easy task, but to dare to bring out her daddy to oppress her. "HMPH, little thing, You must treat her well. C88 Quarterly still wants to go on a blind date. Tang Xiaonei Yiting tried to raise her father but to no avail. Only then did tears fall down her face. Tang Xiaonei, how did Mummy teach you? If you want to keep good habits, then change bad habits. How can you bring Pony into the living room? Do you know how much trouble you're causing to the maid or auntie by doing this? Look at the mud on the ground. Go clean it up yourself. Tang Yu had no choice but to use the dignity of a mother to reprimand his daughter. Uncle Yuan, it's fine, she often helps out with household chores at home, this is a good thing. However, Tang Yu felt that he had to teach his daughter a lesson, otherwise, she would become even more lawless in the future. Alright, I'll go get it. Faced with Tang Yu's plea, Uncle Yuan could only turn around and bring a bucket and a mop over. Tang Xiaonei's small face tensed up. Mummy was really swept by her. Xiaonei, hurry, don't eat until the floor is cleaned. Tang Xiaonei sat on the sofa as she said those words imposingly. Tang Xiaonei looked at the mop, then looked at Tang Yu, and resigned to her fate as she used her two short hands to start dragging the ground. Tang Xiaorui sat on the sofa, not daring to move. He didn't try to help his sister, and was more obedient than ever. Tang Xiaorui. Here, the little fellow originally thought that it wouldn't affect him, but after hearing Mummy's imposing shout, he immediately tensed up. Hurry up and help your sister. You too. In order to show fairness, Tang Yu did not even spare his son. Tang Xiaorui bitterly laughed and jumped down the sofa with his short legs, then walked over slowly. Idiot Xiaonei, it's all your fault. Why did you anger Mummy? Big brother, my hand hurts so much, can you help me drag it out? Sure. The little guy felt that its little hands has become useless after dragging it around twice, so it immediately sent a distress signal to its older brother. Yeah, I'm so angry. As his brother, Tang Xiaorui couldn't reject his sister's plea at all, so he could only take the mop from her hands and continue dragging the floor. Both of Tang Yu's arms were crossed over her chest as she leaned against the sofa, watching the two little fellows do their housework in the living room. Only then did her heart calm down a little. However, this was only the beginning. Who knew what would happen in the future that would give her a headache? That man's educational philosophy was really too bad. He would have to buy a few books on education to let him know what was good for the children and what was too much for them. It was a bad example. A train was speeding down the road under the red light of the lanterns. Jik Xiao Han leaned on the back seat lazily as he closed his eyes to rest. He had just left the company, so it was time for him to have dinner with his grandma. The granny was in her early 60s, and was extremely spirited. Jik Xiao Han was almost unable to endure deep concern of the old lady. In the dining room on the 8th floor of the 7-star hotel, there was a luxurious private room with several old ladies of the same age sitting there. Each of them was shining with jewels, exuding wealth and oppressiveness. Among them was an old lady with a head full of silver hair and gold-rimmed reading glasses. Her temperament was the best, her aura the most imposing, even though her hair was already grey-white, but her skin was well preserved and looked like it was only in her 40s, matched with her naturally white hair, which was coiled behind her head, looking and radiant. This person was the old lady of Ji family, Jik Xiao Han's grandmother. Old Lady Ji, you are really lucky. I heard that this 7-star hotel is owned by your grandson. Gee, this is so generous. It's my honor to be here with you to enjoy delicious food. That's right, Old Lady Ji. Your good fortune is still ahead. Old Lady Ji faced all the old ladies with compliments and a satisfied smile on his face. However, there was still a trace of regret hidden behind this smile. What are you talking about? I'm already this old and I don't have many years to live. I don't care about money. I just want my 2 grandchildren to get married and have kids. I'll be able to enjoy the happiness of seeing my grandchildren. Old Lady Ji said with a rueful smile. Hearing the old Lady Ji mention his children, the granddaughters of the wives all shyly lowered their heads. 3 young ladies of similar age sat at the scene. Each one of them was as beautiful as a jade, young and beautiful, giving off the impression that they were well groomed. However, they were here today for the same reason. They were hoping that Jik Xiao Han would take a fancy to them later on, so although they looked friendly on the surface, They were secretly competing with each other. The big-chested girl shook her body a few times while the tall one talked about her proficiency in martial arts. The pretty girl would lift her long black hair from time to time. In short, there was a good show going on between the three women. Old Lady Ji was also secretly observing. In fact, she didn't ask for much, as long as her grandson liked it. In any case, these were all beauties of prestigious families. No matter how bad they were, the etiquette they received since they were young would definitely not be any worse. Old Lady Ji only had one wish now, so the grandson quickly picked one and brought it home to have children. Just as the atmosphere in the room was getting tense, the door opened and a tall, upright man walked in. Everyone was staring at him, including the elderly wives. The man wore a formal black suit with a matching black shirt. His temperament was both reserved and mysterious. The most breathtaking thing about the man was his young and handsome face. Beneath his handsome eyebrows was a pair of eyes as deep as the sea. His tall and straight nose gave off a sense of pride, and his thin and perfect lips were slightly curved into a smile that was not a smile. C89. The sudden appearance of this man caused the three young girls to be breathless. Although they had occasionally seen a picture of this man in the financial magazine, this was the first time they had seen him in person. Jik Xiao Han slightly raised his hand, his tone filled with gentleness. Grandmother. Old Lady Ji was already immune to his grandson's handsomeness. She quickly beckoned to him. Xiao Han, come here. Quickly, grandmother will introduce you to a few friends. So now, if his grandma wanted him to meet with any woman, he would go and meet her. Making the old man eat less could be considered as a form of filial piety. Xiao Han, these are all my grandmother's friends. Those three are their granddaughters. She is called Li Li, she is called Xue, she is Wen Wen. They are all good kids. The old lady did not beat around the bush and directly stated her intentions. Jik Xiao Han's thin lips slightly raised, his smile was polite yet not lacking in elegance, as he reached into his arms and took out 3 business cards. Here's my name card, nice to meet you. In front of Grandma, Jik Xiao Han's attitude towards them was pretty good. We are also very happy to see young Master Ji. That's right. The young Master Ji is even more intimate than the legends say. I hope I can still eat with younger Master Ji in the future. The 3 women put away Jik Xiao Han's name card happily and excitedly. They were so excited that their faces were flushed red, as if they could immediately stabilize the position of the Ji family's young mistress if they received Jik Xiao Han's name card. However, what they didn't know was that when they shyly got through to this number, the person who picked up the phone wasn't Jik Xiao Han himself but his almighty assistant, Lu King. Lu King had 10 million excuses, to the point where they would never be able to see young Master Ji again in their lives. After eating the entire meal, Jik Xiao Han basically did not have any appetite. He only ate a few bites as if it was normal. His mind was filled with thoughts about the 2 little things at home, and he didn't know if he had returned or if they were thinking about him, or if they would blame him. Finally, it was time for dinner. Jik Xiao Han followed behind his and asked softly, Grandmother, did you arrange a place to stay tonight? Well, I'll go and have a chat with my best friend tonight and not go over to your place. After the old lady finished speaking, she stared at her grandson sternly. Did you not take a fancy to him again? Jik Xiao Han laughed dryly. Grandma, this is just our first meeting, and I don't really understand them. In the future, after I get along with them, I'll know if it's appropriate. Xiao Han, how do you want this grandma to persuade you so that you can split your attention between marriage and major matters? Don't work every day, and if you succeed and you don't have a home, your life won't be complete. The old lady tried very hard to persuade him. Grandma, don't worry. I will definitely give you a big surprise in the future. It will satisfy you. Jik Xiao Han said softly. HMPH. I can't hope for you to have any more surprises. Just don't scare me. Old Lady Ji no longer held any illusions about him. What are you saying, Grandma? Grandson will definitely not scare you this time. The reason why Jik Xiao Han didn't immediately bring the 2 little fellows to his grandmother's side was because he hoped that after he spent a little more time with the 2 children, he would bring the 2 children in front of the elder. Even though the 2 little fellows accepted him, there was still a tang between them, causing Jixiao Han to not be completely confident in controlling the two little families. What if one day he and Tang Yu fell out? Would the two little fellows ruthlessly abandon him and leave? When he thought about that, Jixiao Han's entire body felt as though it was in a world of ice and snow, and he felt a chill run through his body. He absolutely could not allow things to go that far. By the way, is there any news of your brother? He hasn't called me in over 3 months. This brat must still have a grudge against the two of us. The old lady tightened her shawl and sighed heavily. When he thought of his own young grandson, the old man's eyebrows knitted together. He felt as if the heavens had purposely punished them, causing them to be unable to rest at ease. Grandmother, don't worry. I'll give him a call tomorrow. I'll definitely teach him a lesson. Jixiao Han also felt a headache coming on for his younger brother, who had an arrogant and cold personality. Remember, don't be too harsh. His endurance is not as good as yours. Just a few symbolic curses will do. The old lady still felt sorry for the young grandson. All right, Grandma. Do you need me to send you back? Jixiao Han asked with filial piety. No need, I have a driver. The old lady raised her hand and saw her driver and her 2 servants, who were always following her, walk over. Seeing her grandmother's figure leaving, Jixiao Han secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Jixiao Han raised his hand, looked at his watch, and saw that it was almost 9 o'clock. His expression darkened, and immediately walked towards the elevator with large strides. At that moment, in the villa in Ji family's villa, in the bathroom, the smell of water permeated the air. In the white bathtub that was so big, there were 2 little people sitting inside. Tang Xiaonei washed her hair. Half of her dry hair had been tied up into a ball and was tied to her head. Countless naughty little hairs were hanging down, sticking to her face that it was as white as jade. She was holding a few toy ducklings in her hands, while Tang Xiaonei was playing duck mother and duckling. Tang Xiaorui was making trouble at the side and was so angry that Tang Xiaonei kept scolding him. The little scoundrel. C90. Daddy, is the mummy beautiful? The little duckling was taken by the eagle and eaten. Tang Xiaorui hid a little duck behind him as he smiled proudly. Mummy, big brother stole my duckling, you must teach her a lesson. Tang Xiaonei had no other choice but to seek help from Tang Yu. When Jixiao Han returned home, he quickly stepped into the living room. However, he did not see the figures of the children. Young master, you're back. Uncle Yuan hurriedly stepped forward to greet him. Where's the child? Jixiao Han's handsome face looked somewhat anxious. He didn't know why he didn't feel a sense of panic when he saw his child. It was as if the child's appearance was a dream. When he awoke from the dream, he would no longer be able to find them. In the bathroom, Miss Tang is bathing the 2 of them. Uncle Yuan replied with a smile. Oh. Jixiao Han heaved a sigh of relief and walked towards the bathroom. The bathroom door was ajar, and from inside came the sound of the little guy happily humming a nursery rhyme. Hearing the voice, it sounded like the voice of a daughter singing, but after singing a few lines, her son shouted out, "It's so unpleasant to the ears, Tang Xiaonei, stop singing, I beg you, please let me go." However, Tang Xiaonei deliberately turned her face to Tang Xiaorui's ear and sang a few lines even louder. All right, the 2 of you be more obedient. Whoever is disobedient, this mummy will fart. Tang Yu threatened with her head on fire. Jixiao Han leaned on the side of the door. His gloomy eyes looked at the scene in the bathroom absent-mindedly. Water vapor rose. In the vast fog of the bathtub, 2 small and tender bodies were simply like a beautiful picture scroll. Of course, other than the 2 little fellows cursing at each other right now, everything else was still fine. Jixiao Han's heart slowly calmed down. He had been anxious to return and see them, but now, seeing them, he felt that he was satisfied with his life. Jixiao Han's gaze moved from the 2 little fellows' small faces to the woman bent over the bathtub. Tang Yu took off her jacket, and at the moment, she was wearing a thin, white shirt with half of her sleeves rolled up, revealing her slender, snow-white wrists. Her long hair was also wildly tied behind her head, and at this moment, a few strands of hair, due to her being too messy landed on the front of her chest. It was unknown if it was due to the heat that she was sweating or not, but there was a hint of vigilance on her fair face. The gentleness of a mother, coupled with the natural charm of a woman, caused the man who was looking at her to gulp. Thinking back to 5 years ago, when he had a life and death struggle with her, Jixiao Han felt a very strong feeling in his body. It was like an electric current crazily assaulting all the nerves in his body. "Daddy." Just as Jixiao Han was about to feel the impact on his body, he turned her face and discovered him. His crystal-like eyes immediately opened wide and her face was filled with happiness. Cough. "I just came back." Jixiao Han let out a light cough, concealing the sorry state she was in at the bottom of her heart. Actually, he didn't need to explain anything at all. In any case, Tang Yuyu didn't care whether he had just returned or if he had already returned. "Daddy, do you need me to tell you a story?" "Tell the story of Mother Duck with Duckling." When Tang Xiaonai saw his father, he was overjoyed. She immediately wanted to interact a bit with his father. "Sure." "Daddy is listening to you earnestly." The man's big body was squatting beside Tang Yuyu, and he was very close to her. Jixiao Han purposely ignored the woman who was washing his son's face. His beautiful eyes, filled with gentleness, looked at his daughter. "Daddy, it's better if you don't listen to what I've just said. It's so unpleasant to listen to it. I've listened to it countless times. I'm going crazy." Tang Xiaoru immediately tore down his sister's stage. Everything he said was true, and every time he took a bath, his sister would tell him only this one story. "Big brother is so annoying. I told Dad about it, but I didn't ask for you to listen." Tang Xiaonai immediately became angry and glared at her brother. Jixiao Han actually laughed out loud. His daughter was too cute. He carried her like he was Mummy. "Get out of the way." Just as this dirty thought popped up in Jixiao Han's mind, he heard the cold voice of the lady beside him. Was this man too bored? She bathed the children and he came to watch the show. Jixiao Han had no choice but to stand and walk to the side, and said indifferently, "Do you need my help?" "No need, it's all done. As long as you don't get in the way here." Tang Yuyu did not appreciate his kindness. Jixiao Han frowned somewhat angrily. His family's bathroom was so big, how could he possibly be a hindrance to her? Tang Yuyu tested the water temperature, so the children had to get up quickly or else they would be frozen. She sat up with her daughter in her arms and wiped her with a dry towel. The little guy also felt that the atmosphere was a little off, so he could only not say anything more. He obediently sat in Mummy's embrace, allowing Mummy to help him put on his clothes. Jixiao Han leaned on the wall and watched the woman skillfully help his daughter put on her pajamas and slippers. Immediately afterwards, Tang Yuyu picked up her son again. The two little fellows still had some moisture in them, and at the moment, Tang Yuyu's thin shirt had already been stained with moisture twice, and the wet air on her chest had reflected the light purple-colored barrier on top of her. The expression in Jixiao Han's indifferent eyes became a few degrees darker. He was admiring her insolently. In any case, this woman was helping his son put on his clothes, so he wouldn't notice her. Much bigger than he thought. Last time, when he accidentally pushed the door open and entered, Jixiao Han discovered that although this woman looked weak, she was actually very impressive. Tang Xiaonai raised her head and looked at his father, hoping that his father would pay attention to him. Unexpectedly, his father's gaze was all on Mummy. She was a little disappointed and asked sourly, "Daddy, is Mummy beautiful?"